Get up or get out. You're banned from flying. The words sliced through the cabin like a blade. Passengers froze mid-sip, mid-sentence, mid-breath. The captain himself stood in the aisle, uniform crisp, jaw locked, fingers stabbing toward a black woman in a navy suit. His voice carried the finality of a verdict, as if her presence alone was a crime. She didn't flinch. She didn't rise. She sat anchored to seat 3 amperes, eyes calm, posture unyielding, one hand resting lightly on a folded magazine. Around her, the air thickened, charged with disbelief and tension. From the row behind, a white man leaned forward, lips curled with smug certainty. "Told you," he muttered to the captain. "That's my seat. She doesn't belong here." His words dripped with entitlement, amplified by the silence that followed. A woman 2 rows across, phone already in hand, hit record. Her camera lens trembled, not from turbulence, but from adrenaline. Another passenger whispered, "This doesn't feel right." Yet no one moved. No one challenged the accusation. The captain's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, I won't repeat myself. Vacate the seat, or you'll be removed before takeoff." Still, the woman remained still, breathing slow, measured. Every second of her silence pulled the cabin tighter, like a string stretched to its breaking point. She looked not at the captain, not at the man behind her, but straight ahead, as though she had seen this scene before. Because she had. Many times. Her past echoed in the present. Years earlier, a different uniform, a different voice, telling her she didn't belong in a lounge, in a hotel, in a boardroom. Each time, the same tone. Each time, she carried the memory with steel in her bones. Now, inside this aircraft, history tried to replay itself. But this time the stakes were higher. This was her seat. Her ticket. Her right. And much more than that, this was her company's sky. The cabin vibrated with whispers. Eyes darting between uniforms and quiet defiance. Some passengers shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward, hungry for confrontation. A man near the front shook his head and muttered, "Unbelievable." But the captain doubled down, voice rising, authority swelling with the cabin air. "You're done here. Security will meet you at the gate. You are officially banned from flying this airline." Gasps. Murmurs. A sharp intake of collective breath. The black woman didn't move. Instead, she turned one page of her magazine with deliberate grace, as if the captain's decree was nothing more than background noise. A subtle defiance, louder than any shout. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe." These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. Her eyes lifted, finally locking onto the captain's. No anger. No fear. Just patience, the kind that precedes storms. And in that stillness, the entire cabin became a courtroom, waiting for the verdict they didn't know was already written. Vanessa Carter looked like any other traveler trying to disappear into a long-haul flight. Her seat, 3 amperes. Her outfit, clean navy blazer, pressed slacks, a white blouse that caught the cabin's soft light. No designer logos. No glittering jewelry. Only a thin silver watch that ticked quietly, almost stubbornly, against the hush of first class. She'd boarded without fuss, scanning her ticket like everyone else. No assistant shadowing her. No entourage announcing her presence. Just a single carry-on and a leather folio tucked neatly beneath the seat. To the cabin, she was invisible. To herself, she was deliberate. Because Vanessa wasn't only a passenger. She was a test. For 2 years, she had listened to rumors, subtle patterns in complaints, quiet posts on social media. Passengers who looked like her, dressed like her, too often treated as if they didn't belong in the very seats they had paid for. She had ignored some. She had studied others. And now, she was here. In plain sight. Unmarked, unaccompanied. Waiting to see how the system would reveal itself. Her presence unsettled people in ways they couldn't name. The man in row 4 glanced at her with a smirk that said wrong section. A flight attendant hesitated at her row, scanning her from shoes to hair as if the uniform had authority over belonging. Across the aisle, another passenger lowered his newspaper, eyebrows raised. It was all so familiar, silent signals rehearsed in countless lobbies, lounges, and boardrooms before. Vanessa turned a page of her magazine. Logistics. Supply chains. She absorbed the words, but really she was listening to the shift in air, to the whispers just loud enough to sting. Not her seat, the white man muttered behind her, his voice aimed at no one and everyone. His certainty carried weight. Enough for the captain to pause. Enough for doubt to creep into those who didn't know her. The irony pressed heavy. Vanessa had poured capital into this airline when others backed out, had negotiated routes that saved jobs, had defended its survival in boardrooms continents away. Yet in this cabin, stripped of title and context, she was reduced to suspicion. She didn't move. Didn't argue. She had long ago learned that the louder she defended herself, the faster people labeled her aggressive. Silence. Though silence had gravity. Silence forced others to lean in, to fill it with their own discomfort. From 2 rows back, a young woman raised her phone. The red recording light glowed like a tiny witness. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't lower the lens. Somewhere deeper in the cabin, a passenger whispered, "Feels wrong." Barely audible under the steady hum of the engines waiting outside. Vanessa inhaled slowly, grounding herself. A memory surfaced. 25 years old, red-eye flight to Atlanta, denied entry to the lounge because. This section is for members. 32, boarding a train in Paris, ticket questioned twice, while others walked through unchecked. The faces changed, but the refrain never did. You don't belong here. Now, at 41, sitting in seat 3 amperes of an aircraft partially funded by her own company's investment, she heard it again echoing, recycled, inevitable. But this time, she wasn't here to leave quietly. Around her, the plush silence of first class fractured into something taut, restless. The captain lingered in the aisle, jaw tight. The white passenger folded his arms, victorious already. The phone camera blinked. Vanessa remained. And the storm had only just begun. The smirk behind her sharpened into a voice that cut through the cabin. That's my seat. She's in the wrong place. People like her always try this. The words weren't whispered. They were flung into the air like a challenge, designed to stick, designed to sway. Passengers stiffened. Some exchanged glances. Others looked down, pretending not to hear, but their silence carried its own verdict. The flight attendant nearest to 3 amperes, Nicole Harris, 35, blonde bob tucked perfectly behind one ear, folded her arms with the weight of premature judgment. "Sir, I'll handle it," she said crisply, then turned toward Vanessa. "Ma'am, I need to see your boarding pass again." Her tone wasn't professional. It was performative. Sharp edges under the silk. Vanessa slid her gaze from the page of her magazine to the attendant's face. Calm. Unhurried. Then she reached for her folio, pulling out the stub she had already presented at the gate. Seat 3 amperes. First class. Paid in full. She held it out, steady as stone. Nicole barely glanced at it. "This doesn't look right. We've had issues with counterfeits before. You'll need to step aside while we sort this out." The man behind her snickered, leaning back into his seat, as if victory had already landed. "Told you. She doesn't belong." From 2 rows across, a middle-aged woman frowned. Her lips parted as though to speak, but no words came. Instead, she reached for her water glass, hiding behind the motion. Another passenger, young, hoodie pulled low, muttered under his breath. "Why's it always the same story?" His phone angled slightly, screen glowing red. Recording. Nicole's posture hardened. "If you refuse, I'll have to escalate this." "Captain?" The captain, who had been lingering at the edge of the cabin, stepped forward, authority pressed into each stride. His presence wasn't requested, it was summoned like a weapon. He looked down at Vanessa, expression flat. "Ma'am, stand up." Now. The air thickened. Passengers shifted uneasily. Some craned their necks for a better view. Others whispered just loud enough to fill the silence with static. Vanessa didn't move. She let the command hang. Let the weight of it echo against the hush of the cabin. Nicole's lips curved into something close to satisfaction. "Security can meet us before takeoff," she said, her voice carrying farther than necessary. "We can't have fraud in first class." Fraud. The word landed like an accusation stamped on her forehead. Vanessa remembered that word at 26, when a bank froze her account after her first 6-figure deposit. Fraud, they called it. At 34, when an investor doubted her collateral, ignoring the numbers in black and white. Fraud again. The pattern was as predictable as the clouds outside the window. She inhaled, slow and steady, closing the magazine with deliberate care. The sound of the cover snapping shut was louder than the murmurs around her. The captain crossed his arms. "Last chance. Stand up, or we'll have you removed." And there it was, the escalation, loud and public. The verdict delivered before the trial. Passengers stared. Phones lifted higher. The hush of first class transformed into the hum of tension, thick and undeniable. Vanessa sat still, anchored, silent. The storm had entered its next phase. Vanessa didn't rise. She didn't defend herself, didn't plead, didn't scramble for justification the way they expected. Instead, she folded her boarding pass neatly, slid it back into her folio, and placed both hands calmly on her lap. The gesture was so ordinary it was radical. Silence wrapped around her like armor. The captain's demand still echoed in the air, but she let it hang unanswered, suspended, heavy. Passengers leaned forward, waiting for the outburst that never came. Nicole, the attendant, frowned, her authority fraying at the edges. "Ma'am, this is your final warning," she pressed, louder this time, as though volume could substitute for truth. But Vanessa's eyes lowered again to her magazine, closed now, resting quietly on the armrest. Her breathing was steady, her posture unshaken. She sat as if anchored to the seat itself, as if the weight of her calm presence could not be moved by any title or uniform in the aisle. The silence unsettled them more than any protest could have. The white man behind her leaned forward, whispering just loud enough. "Why isn't she saying anything?" "Guilty, obviously." His smirk widened, feeding off his own narrative. But others felt something different. A woman too rose up, clenched her fists in her lap. A college student in row 5 muttered under his breath. "Nah, she's too calm for this to be fake." The red recording light on his phone burned brighter, steady, capturing every second. Vanessa's mind drifted not away from the present, but deeper into it. She remembered the first time she learned the power of stillness. 23 years old, her real estate commission check withheld because it didn't look legitimate. They had waited for her to rage, to prove them right. Instead, she said nothing, stood silent until the paperwork was forced through. That silence bought her first property. That silence started everything. Now, in seat 3 amperes, the same lesson unfolded again. Her stillness wasn't weakness. It was strategy. The captain shifted uncomfortably. Authority usually provoked obedience, or resistance, both were manageable. But this patient quiet was different. It unsettled him, left him exposed. Nicole glanced at the other flight attendants, searching for support. None stepped forward. Even they seemed unsure, caught in the gravity of Vanessa's composure. The tension spread like static. One by one, passengers began to murmur. Some frowned, others nodded, and a few simply kept recording, knowing instinctively that something larger was unfolding than a simple seat dispute. Vanessa finally lifted her eyes, not to the captain, not to Nicole, but to the ceiling. Her gaze was steady, as if reminding herself that skies had always belonged to her, that no accusation could shrink that truth. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The cabin was already speaking for her. The silence was cracking. Not because Vanessa moved, but because others finally did. 2 rows back, a young woman with straight black hair held her phone higher, the red recording light catching the edge of her trembling hands. She whispered to the man beside her, "This isn't right. Look how calm she island." The man, mid-30s, hoodie pulled over his head, nodded, then angled his own phone discreetly toward the aisle. Another digital witness born. Nicole noticed. Her voice sharpened. "Please put the phones away. Filming is prohibited during boarding." But the warning didn't land. If anything, it amplified the defiance. A middle-aged woman in a gray cardigan muttered just loud enough. "If nothing's wrong, why stop people from recording?" The words spread like sparks. Passengers who had stayed silent now leaned forward. Alert! The white man who claimed the seat scoffed. "You all really think she belongs here? Come on. First class isn't charity." He laughed at his own line, expecting agreement. Instead, the cardigan woman shook her head. "I saw her ticket. She showed it. That's 3 amperes. The captain turned sharply toward her. "Ma'am, please don't interfere." But the interference was already growing. In row 6, a young black couple exchanged looks. The woman whispered, "I've seen this play out too many times." The man squeezed her hand and said softly, "Not again. Not today." They didn't raise their voices, but the conviction in their tone was enough to be felt across the rows. From the back of the cabin, someone else said what many were thinking. "She hasn't even raised her voice once. Look at them. Look at her. Who looks out of control?" The murmurs grew. The phones multiplied. The silence that had once favored authority was now leaning toward scrutiny. Vanessa remained still, eyes lowered, posture anchored. But around her, a chorus was forming. She didn't direct it. She didn't need to. Truth had its own momentum. Nicole folded her arms tighter, masking unease with authority. "This is escalating because people won't follow instructions. Please stay out of it." The cardigan woman's reply was firm. "Number." It's escalating because you're targeting someone who showed you proof. The hoodie man chimed in, louder now. Yeah, I got the whole thing on video. Boarding pass, her seat, your words. Everything. The captain's jaw tightened. He turned toward Vanessa again, but the certainty in his voice was cracking. The crowd was no longer passive. They were participating, recording, pushing back. Vanessa lifted her gaze for the first time since the confrontation began. Not at Nicole, not at the captain. At the passengers, the witnesses now stirring into action. Her eyes met the young woman holding her phone. Calm. Steady. The kind of look that didn't ask for help, but gave permission for truth. The young woman swallowed hard, then said it aloud. She belongs here, I saw it. The words hung heavy, louder than the captain's commands, louder than Nicole's warnings. It was the first declaration from a witness. And it would not be the last. The tide was turning. The captain's patience snapped. His voice, steady until now, rose an octave, hard and final. Enough. Security will meet us at the gate. If she doesn't move, she'll be removed by force. The words cut through the cabin like static. Passengers shifted, unsettled. Some looked away, others pressed their phones tighter into their palms. The declaration wasn't just about Vanessa anymore, it was about power, and how far they were willing to stretch it. Nicole exhaled sharply, lips curling into something close to triumph. You heard him, she said, addressing no one and everyone. Fraud won't sit in first class on my watch. The white man leaned back in his seat, arms folded across his chest like a king satisfied with the execution he had ordered. Knew it, he muttered smugly. Always the same scam. Gasps broke out from the rows ahead. A man in business casual shook his head. Scam? She showed you the ticket. His voice wasn't loud, but in the silence, it carried. The captain ignored it. Sir, he said sharply. Stay out of this. But witnesses weren't staying out anymore. The young woman with the phone raised her voice, trembling but resolute. She hasn't done anything wrong. You're treating her like a criminal for sitting in her seat. Nicole whipped her head around. Put that phone away now, or I'll... What? The hoodie man interrupted, holding his own phone higher. Kick us all off. Try it, this is already online. The captain's jaw tightened. His authority, once unquestioned, was fraying in real time. Passengers murmured louder, phones recording from every angle, the hum of defiance rising against the hum of the engines outside. Vanessa remained still. Her silence was no longer just her own, it was mirrored by the crowd's growing doubt. Nicole, desperate to reclaim control, took a step closer. This isn't about race, she insisted, though no one had said the word. This is about policy. The cardigan woman barked out a bitter laugh. Policy doesn't mean ripping up someone's dignity because of how they look. The word look landed heavy. Eyes darted to Vanessa's navy blazer, her simple watch, her steady hands. Nothing about her looked counterfeit. Nothing except the prejudice projected onto her. The captain raised his radio, thumb hovering over the call button. Last warning, stand up, or security will drag you off this plane. The aisle fell silent. Passengers held their breath, phones frozen in midair. Vanessa didn't move. She didn't speak. She simply shifted her gaze from the captain's radio to his eyes, calm and unwavering. And in that silence, something cracked not in her, but in them. Nicole's patience cracked first. Her hands shot out, snatching the boarding pass stub from Vanessa's folio before anyone could react. The sound of paper tearing echoed louder than the cabin's hum. Rip. Clean down the middle. She held the halves like trophies. This seat is reassigned, she announced, her voice cutting through the rows. You're going to economy, or you're off this flight. Gasps rippled down the aisle. Phones tilted higher. The cardigan woman pressed her palm to her mouth. The hoodie man swore under his breath, his camera shaking with anger. Vanessa blinked once. That was all. No outburst. No scramble. Just a slow blink, like she had seen this exact act before. The white passenger leaned forward, smirking. Finally. Took you long enough. He slid into the aisle, already reaching for the armrest of 3 amperes as though the throne had been reclaimed. Sir, the captain said firmly, please wait. But the damage was done. The tearing of that ticket wasn't just symbolic, it was violence disguised as procedure. Fraud. Nicole hissed under her breath, but loud enough for the front rows to hear. We've seen this scam before. Print-at-home tickets. Fake IDs. Think she can dress up and sneak in. The cardigan woman shot to her feet. That's a lie. I saw it. The scanner went green. You know it did. Nicole spun on her. Sit down before I have you removed too. The tension in the cabin flared hot. Passengers exchanged looks, some frightened, others furious. A man in row 6 muttered, "This is insane. She's done nothing." His phone streamed live to his followers now, the comments pouring in like fuel. Vanessa's calm remained unbroken, but inside, memory pressed against her ribs. At 30, she had walked into a luxury hotel only to watch the clerk tear her reservation slip in half and toss it in the trash. System error, they'd called it. She'd slept in her car that night, shivering not from the cold but from humiliation. That humiliation had become her blueprint for empire. Now, here it was again. The same gesture. The same arrogance. And this time, she wasn't the one unprepared. The captain raised his voice, cutting the tension like static. "This is your last chance. Leave willingly, or we'll have you escorted in restraints." Restraints. The word dropped like a bomb. Passengers gasped. A mother in the back clutched her child closer. Someone whispered, "For sitting in her seat?" Nicole's lips curled into a smirk. "You brought this on yourself," she said. The white man laughed under his breath. "Hope economy has room for you." Phones captured it all, the ripped ticket, the threat of force, the smirks of certainty. The internet was already watching. Vanessa exhaled once, slow, steady, unbroken. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was a fuse. And it had just been lit. The halves of the ticket still dangled in Nicole's hand when Vanessa moved, not rushed, not flustered, but deliberate. She reached into her blazer pocket and drew out a phone. Black, sleek, unadorned. With one tap, the cabin's rhythm shifted. "Rachel," she said softly into the receiver, her voice low but clear enough to carry. "Log this. Flight 623, Gate C14. Protocol Alpha." On the other end, a calm voice answered instantly. "Understood. Board members are being notified. Do you want escalation?" Passengers tilted forward, catching every word. The cardigan woman mouthed, "Board members?" The hoodie man zoomed his camera closer. Nicole snorted, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please. Calling your little friends? That's not going to save you." But Vanessa wasn't speaking to Nicole anymore. She was speaking to the system itself. "Timestamp the ticket destruction," Vanessa continued evenly. "Cross, check the passenger manifest. And Rachel, make sure the legal team sees this live feed." The cabin gasped. Someone muttered, "Legal team?" Another whispered, "Who is she?" The captain stiffened. "Ma'am, you have no right to." "Correction," Vanessa interrupted, her voice still calm, still measured. "I have every right." Her phone buzzed. Rachel again, steady, efficient. "Confirmation. James and Sarah are online. David is pulling the crew protocols. Your signal is live. M." Vanessa nodded once, closing her eyes briefly, as though centering herself. When she opened them, her gaze cut through the aisle. "Proceed," she said simply. Nicole scoffed louder now, but her smirk flickered. "You're bluffing." But the witnesses were already piecing it together. The cardigan woman leaned toward her neighbor. "She's not bluffing, she's connected." From the back, another passenger raised his phone higher. "This is going viral. Right now." The captain took a step forward, trying to reclaim control. "Ma'am, this is a private flight operation. You can't just involve outside." But Vanessa's voice sliced clean through his authority. "I don't need permission to involve what I already own." Gasps erupted. Nicole blinked. The white passenger's smirk faltered for the first time. The hoodie man whispered to his camera. She said, "Own." "OWN. Y'all hearing this?" Vanessa lowered the phone, resting it gently on her lap. Her posture hadn't shifted. Her voice hadn't risen. But the storm was turning. The torn ticket, once a symbol of humiliation, now hung like evidence in Nicole's trembling hand. The silence that followed wasn't compliance, it was anticipation. Something bigger was unfolding. And for the first time, the crew looked uncertain of which side of it they stood on. The cabin had gone eerily quiet, as if everyone sensed the shift but no one dared name it. Nicole still clutched the torn boarding pass, though her fingers trembled now. The white passenger leaned forward, frowning, trying to gauge if his confidence was still safe. Vanessa stood. Not hurried. Not hesitant. She rose with the steady grace of someone who had waited long enough. Her phone rested at her side, still connected, Rachel's calm voice faint through the speaker. "Board is live. All directors present." Vanessa let the words hang in the air before she spoke. "You think I'm here by mistake," she began, her tone calm, unshaken. "You think I'm a fraud, a trespasser in a seat I paid for. Nicole opened her mouth, ready to retort, but Vanessa's gaze froze her mid-breath. You called me a scammer in front of this cabin. You tore up my boarding pass like it was trash. You threatened to drag me out in restraints. Her eyes shifted from Nicole to the captain, then back to the white passenger. But here's what you didn't know. She lifted the phone higher, letting Rachel's voice carry. This isn't just a seat on a plane, Vanessa said. This is my airline. I am Vanessa Carter, shareholder, board director, and co-owner of this fleet you are standing in right now. Gasps erupted across the cabin. Passengers who had stayed quiet jolted forward. The cardigan woman's phone trembled as she whispered, "Oh my God." The hoodie man shouted into his stream. She owns it. She owns the airline. Nicole's smirk shattered. Her voice cracked. That's impossible. The captain's jaw tightened, but his eyes darted, betraying the calculation behind them. He had heard the name before. He had seen it in memos, quarterly reports, whispered in boardrooms he never entered. And now the name stood in front of him, in seat 3 amperes, where he had tried to erase her. The white passenger's smirk drained into pale confusion. Wait, you're saying? Vanessa's reply was surgical. I don't need your recognition. Your ignorance doesn't shrink my ownership. But it does expose this airline, and everyone watching sees it now. The murmurs swelled into a roar. Phones recorded every syllable, every flicker of panic crossing the crew's faces. Vanessa stepped closer to the aisle, shoulders squared, presence undeniable. So when you tore up my ticket, you weren't just insulting me. You were insulting the very board that signs your paychecks. And when you called me a fraud, you slandered the name that sits on your contracts. Her silence after those words was thunderous. Nicole's lips parted soundlessly. The captain cleared his throat, but no words came. The white passenger sank back into his seat, his entitlement collapsing into something smaller, weaker. Around them, the witnesses no longer whispered, they declared. She told you. She owns it. This is history right here. Vanessa exhaled slowly, then set her phone back on the armrest. Now, shall we proceed properly? The trial was over. The verdict had been delivered. And it belonged to her. The words hadn't even finished echoing when the cabin fractured. Gasps turned into chatter, chatter into declarations, and declarations into outrage. The cardigan woman stood, phone raised high. You heard her. She's the owner. Her voice cracked, but the conviction behind it was steel. Passengers around her began nodding, some clapping instinctively, others raising their own cameras higher. Nicole staggered a step back. The halves of the torn boarding pass still clutched in her hand like damning evidence. Her voice came out small, brittle. She can't be. But the hoodie man cut her off, his live stream now topping thousands of viewers. Say her name, Vanessa Carter. Shareholder, co-owner. They tried to throw her off her own plane. His comments flooded in real time. Fire them. Sue them. This is injustice. The white passenger who had claimed her seat shrank against the headrest, color draining from his face. I didn't know, he stammered, his earlier arrogance unraveling in front of strangers and screens alike. The captain's composure cracked visibly. He adjusted his tie, his jaw tight, but his eyes darted everywhere, except Vanessa's. Authority had evaporated. What remained was exposure, raw, undeniable exposure. Phones dinged as notifications exploded. Clips were already circulating, hashtags rising like wildfire. Number seat stolen, number Vanessa Carter. Number grounded injustice. A young man in row 7 leaned into his camera, voice shaking with excitement. You're watching history. She just flipped the entire power dynamic without even standing up until now. Nicole's hands shook. She dropped the torn ticket halves onto the galley tray as if they burned her fingers. I didn't mean. You meant every word. The cardigan woman snapped, no longer trembling. We all heard you. You called her a fraud. You threatened her. You tried to erase her. The murmurs of agreement swelled. A mother rocking her infant whispered. She was calm the whole time. A businessman muttered. That's leadership. That's control. The cabin, once silent in complicity, had turned into a jury, and the verdict was unanimous. The white passenger covered his face with his hand. Please don't sue me, he muttered weakly, but the cameras caught every word. The internet wouldn't forgive him. Nicole glanced desperately toward the captain, searching for rescue. But he was frozen, sweat beading at his temples, his authority unraveling under the weight of witnesses. Vanessa hadn't raised her voice once. She didn't need to. The room spoke for her now. Every passenger who had doubted, Every silent witness who had hesitated was now a part of the chorus exposing the truth. Rachel's voice buzzed faintly from Vanessa's phone on the armrest. Live coverage confirms trending status. All directors have seen the footage. The crew had been stripped bare. Their uniforms no longer commanded respect. Their actions condemned them instead. And in the middle of it all, Vanessa stood composed, unshaken, the quiet storm that had turned an entire cabin upside down. The cabin buzzed with voices, phones raised like 1,000 unblinking eyes. Nicole stood pale, the halves of the torn boarding pass abandoned at her feet. The captain adjusted his tie for the third time, but the gesture couldn't hide the crack in his authority. The white passenger sat slumped, staring at the floor as if it could swallow him whole. Vanessa lifted her phone again, calm as ever. "Rachel," she said softly, but the cabin leaned in to hear. "Initiate crew audit. Effective immediately." On the other end, Rachel's voice was steady, efficient. "Confirmed. Do you want suspension logged?" Vanessa's eyes locked on the captain, who froze under her gaze. Then she turned toward Nicole, whose hands trembled at her sides. "Yes. Suspend Captain James Moore. Suspend Flight Attendant Nicole Harris. Effective immediately. Revoke their system access." A collective gasp rippled down the aisle. Rachel's voice came crisp. "Processing. Complete. Both credentials revoked." The captain's badge buzzed against his chest, a dull red glow flashing where it had once shone green. Nicole's handheld device beeped, its screen going blank before her eyes. She tapped frantically, but the system had already locked her out. Gasps turned into murmurs. Murmurs into cheers. The cardigan woman clapped once, sharp, certain. Soon others joined palms striking together in a rhythm of justice. Nicole shook her head, lips trembling. You can't just." Vanessa's gaze was cool steel. "I don't need to just. I am the board you answer to. And right now, you've answered for the last time." The captain opened his mouth, searching for words, but none came. Authority had slipped from him like sand through open fingers. The white passenger buried his face deeper into his hands, muttering, "This isn't real. This can't be real." But every camera proved otherwise. The live stream soared past tens of thousands, the comments exploding with fire emojis, demands for accountability, declarations of triumph. A teenager in row 10 shouted. "She fired them. She fired them on the spot." Vanessa set her phone down again, folding her hands calmly in her lap, as if nothing monumental had just occurred. But around her, the cabin pulsed with the electricity of history in motion. The hoodie man whispered into his live stream. "This is justice. Live. Right here, right now." Nicole stumbled backward into the galley, pale, her authority stripped bare. The captain sagged into the jump seat, staring blankly at the red light on his badge, a man undone by his own arrogance. Vanessa inhaled, steady, unshaken. Her words dropped into the air like stone into still water. "You mistook silence for weakness. That was your last mistake." Phones caught it. Passengers replayed it. The internet turned it into a rallying cry. The punishment was delivered not with rage, not with force, but with precision. Quiet. Absolute. Final. The cabin was no longer a cabin. It was a stage, and justice had just been performed in real time. The tension that once smothered the air had given way to something else. Relief, awe, vindication. Nicole slumped in the galley, eyes wide, her device dark in her hands. The captain sat motionless, his badge flashing red like a wound exposed to the world. The white passenger stayed silent, shoulders hunched, no longer a conqueror but a child caught lying in class. And Vanessa was the only one who hadn't shifted an inch in panic. She was steady. Rooted. Composed. The cardigan woman raised her phone like a torch. "This is going everywhere," she said, her voice trembling with adrenaline. "The world is going to see this." The hoodie man nodded into his live stream. "She grounded them. She literally grounded the flight." Passengers clapped, some tentative at first, then louder, until the rhythm filled the aisle. A businessman in row 5 tapped his armrest like a drum. A mother whispered to her daughter, "Remember this. Remember what dignity looks like." Vanessa waited for the noise to swell, then gently lifted her hand. The applause softened, dimmed, stilled. All eyes returned to her. Her voice was calm, steady, a voice that didn't need volume to carry. "I don't need to record this moment," she said. "I am the record. And today, you've seen the truth. Silence is not surrender. It's strategy. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it simply waits. And speaks once. The words sank deep. Passengers leaned forward, absorbing every syllable. The cardigan woman wiped a tear from her cheek. The hoodie man whispered, "That's going viral tonight." End. Vanessa gathered her folio, slipped her phone into her pocket, and sat back down in seat 3 amperes, the seat they had tried to strip from her. She crossed her legs, opened her magazine, and turned a page as if nothing had happened. But everything had. The plane remained on the tarmac, grounded not by weather or mechanics, but by truth. Grounded by justice. And as the applause swelled again louder this time, free, unashamed Vanessa Carter simply sat, the embodiment of patience rewarded, of dignity defended, of power revealed. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The cabin already knew. The world watching already knew. The verdict was final.